Now that we've had a chance to look at the full scope of tape on the Steelers' preseason win over the Seahawks, let's talk about the offensive coordinator with Matt Canada because I liked what I saw. We'll talk about what I liked. We also get to hear from Kenny Pickett, Kendrick Green, Anthony McFarland, and Gunnar Olszewski on their days. We also have Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio. It's going to be a fun Monday episode here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus episodes like we had this weekend as for our recap after the game was over. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Wes, you're back, man. We were both on hand. It was cool to see each other in the press box, eating some of that pork that they had up in the press box food. It was dope. But Wes, we got to talk about the Steelers offense because they looked really sharp. Every quarterback threw a touchdown. Kenny threw two. And the first thing that I was thinking, I thought this all throughout the game, but especially when I rewatched it this morning or Sunday morning, we're recording this on Sunday, I'm like, man, this was a good first step for Matt Canada's offense with these guys.
It absolutely was, Chris. You know, I think for a lot of us, and you and I discussed this all throughout the offseason, you know, both here on Locked On when you joined Moats and I on SNR, what's this offense, you know, what does an offense built in Matt Canada's image really look like? Because we all know when you had 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger last year and Matt Canada, there was some acquiescing, there was, you know, some give and take between what they were able to, you know, how Matt Canada would really want to run an offense versus just what Ben was able to do at his age in terms of mobility and some of that stuff. So that had been a big question mark. What is the offense that's now going to be completely made in Matt Canada's image? And I don't know why. It sounds like I'm quoting an Old Testament Bible verse.
It does. Made in his image.
It's made in Matt Canada's image. To me, you know, that was one of the biggest questions of the offseason. We've talked about the quarterbacks. We've talked about, can the defense get, you know, out of the basement of the NFL in terms of run defense? A lot of these different themes that we've discussed, that was one of the big ones. And to me, I think you started to see what that could really look like last night, or pardon me, Saturday night. A lot of jet sweeps, a lot of pocket moving, a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of some things that some people might label as gimmicky, but I think in 2022 we're past that. These are things that a lot of teams are doing on offense now, a little bit more play action than we've seen at times. So that, I think, is, you know, preseason game, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Even all the excitement that I'm sure we're going to get into with the quarterbacks and some of this stuff, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because it is still preseason. But I think one thing that you should be encouraged by is we know Matt Canada wants to take this offense in a different direction, certainly than last year. And you started to see that come together last night. Steve Sims with a really nice jet sweep run. A lot of pocket. You know, some of Kenny's best throws were with the pocket moving. Some of Mitch's best throws are with the pocket moving. I think that's something to be encouraged by at this point. And I think you can hope that it's only going to get better as we go forward here. I mean, if that's kind of the ground level, if that's them laying the foundation there and they build from there, I think there's a lot to be excited by there. I really do.
It certainly seemed like it. I mean, and there was a lot to be excited about for this game. I was actually joking with Tony Serino, who was actually also on hand for the game. He attended, and we met up, and we've been joking. Also, Tony put a bet on this game, but it was minus 3.5. He said when Kenny Pickett threw the touchdown, he said, "I'm calling him Kenny Moneybags from now on because I'm feeling great." But you know, we were joking around. I was like, was this the most exciting preseason game of all time? Because how many years, Wes, have we watched preseason games? And once Ben Roethlisberger was out of the mix, it was Landry Jones, it was Dennis Dixon, it was Charlie Batch,
even young Mason Rudolph,
young Mason Rudolph, Devlin Hodges, even Josh Dobbs. You know, Josh Dobbs also good job by him in the Browns game that he played. He made some big plays there, but it was but there was never this level of like, oh my gosh, this offense is so fun to watch with the second and third string groups. And it just was. I want us to listen to Kenny real quick, because we were talking to him in the locker room, and he was talking about the impact of the running quarterback, and not just running to run, but running to open things up. Listen to how Kenny broke things down about his first night in a Steelers uniform.
Speak, Coach, in terms of running, take it if it's there, take it if you like it.
Yeah, I think we're all really good athletes in the quarterback room, and I think not using your legs is just really kind of holding you back and not taking advantage of one of the tools you have in your game. So in those kind of situations when I felt like things were breaking down, or if I could just knife it for 4 yards and get a first down, I was going to do that. It really helped us out moving the chains, and it's something I'm definitely going to do as my career.
How'd you get the Connor on the 2-point? Was that
supposed
to go there all along, or was that multiple?
I wanted Connor in there. It was one of the guys that I rep with a lot. I have a lot of trust in him. He's a great playmaker. Like I said, just a lot of reps, being in rookie mini camp together. I made sure that he was out there for that one. He did a great job. His turn, I wanted to plug it on him quick, and we executed on it.
Kenny, I know it's a preseason game. I'm sure they've asked you, but to end it like you did.
Yeah, very special. Like I said, really the whole night was special. Been here for so long, never been able to go to pitch this Steelers game. The first one I have, as an NFL player, to finish that way in that stadium with a lot of family and friends there was awesome.
You started out completing your first 10 passes. Were you aware that you kind of had this streak going as you started?
I don't know. I wouldn't say. I was just in rhythm. I just wanted to stay in rhythm, complete passes, move the chains. That was really the goal coming in, and kind of just let my ability just take over for me and play fast. So that was really all I was focused on doing.
So you heard him there, Wes, and you're hearing Kenny Pickett talk about the abilities of what he can do with his feet, whether it's to buy time to his right, buy time to his left, knife forward to get 4 or 5 yards. And he did that on a few occasions. Ran 3 times for 16 yards, was able to move the sticks. This is what we were talking about last year with Matt Canada's offense, when everyone's saying, oh, it's terrible, oh, it's bad. He's way in over his head. And I'm like, no, I don't think you get it. What he's good at, Ben Roethlisberger can't do, and until he's gone, you're not going to see this offense be more what it's like. And again, this was just a preseason game, and a preseason game against the backups of the Seahawks, who are the first team probably is going to stink anyways.
Yeah, but they're not. The Seahawks might have a top 5 pick next year.
Right. So like, no one's saying this team's going to the Super Bowl, even though I tweeted that as a joke, and most people got it.
No, you meant it. You meant it.
I meant it's right. I meant it. I'm on the Locked On Steelers podcast, baby. We got to say they're going to the Super Bowl every episode. But my point is that this offense still worked, and a part of it was the smart ways of, it's not just saying, hey, if you see it, run. It's creating opportunities. It's the way that the passing concepts stretch the field both vertically and horizontally, because the defense can only cover so many things. And when they have to worry about the quarterback escaping, it forces you to have to take one thing, try to take that away. And if you're trying to take that away, you're most likely opening up something somewhere. And consistently throughout the night in Matt Canada's offense, whether it was Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, or Kenny Pickett, there seemed like that option was there for easy pickings. I think that's a very good foundation to lay down.
Easy pickings. I see what you did there, but you're absolutely correct, Chris. This is as much as hey, Ben Roethlisberger, 18 years. I mean, for 16 or 17 of those 18 years, he gave the Steelers a chance to win every single game. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He's a future first ballot Hall of Famer for a reason. But this looks different, and it looks more like the new wave of quarterbacks in the National Football League. We all know how mobile and how athletic Ben Roethlisberger was in the first portion of his Steelers tenure before he got older and some of those bumps and bruises started to add up. But Ben, when he first came into the league, was still kind of an exception to that rule, right?
Yeah.
There were still more Tom Brady's and Eli Manning's and Peyton Manning's. Guys who stood in the pocket and, you would see Manning and Brady pull it down occasionally and run for 6 or 7 yards when they needed to, without a doubt. Right. But not like Mahomes does, not like Josh Allen does, not like Justin Herbert does, right? That, Joe Burrow as well, too. That, to me, is the mobility element that you want from your quarterback. I'm not even talking Lamar Jackson, right, where he could lead your team in rushing. I'm talking when the defense is giving you 6, 7, 8, 12 yards there, go take that real estate that the defense is giving you and it makes the defense, obviously, now they have to stay on their toes. They have to game plan against that element. It opens up a lot for the offense. I think it helps you in play action as well, too. There's a lot to like just from those little snippets because, again, that is the future wave of the NFL. If everybody go right now and make your list of your top 10 quarterbacks in the league, I bet you 8 of them fit that mold. You know what I mean? And the one who doesn't is like Tom Brady, who's a future Hall of Famer and the GOAT, right? And maybe one other guy. But on down the list, you go down that list of the elite quarterbacks, even Aaron Rodgers, not as much as he used to, but he still moves. He's still mobile when he needs to be. That, I think, is one of the things to be most excited about. Mason doesn't have that element of his game as much, but I think we all assume it's going to be more Mitch and Kenny, certainly for the long haul.
Right.
And both of those guys showcase that, and I think that's exciting because as great as Ben Roethlisberger was, and as much as he showed that at times, in the first half of his career, now the Steelers have an offensive coordinator who really wants to use that as a weapon in their arsenal. Not just Ben when he was back there, in the Ken Wisenhunt offense, freelancing, making a bunch of Browns miss, and then throwing a dart to the end zone, right? It's part of the game plan now, and I think that makes it even more difficult to plan against the Steelers if you're an opposing defense. That, to me, is very exciting heading into this new chapter of Steelers football.
I do think it's exciting. We got a lot more to talk about this offense still because it wasn't just the quarterbacks. I thought the offensive line played well. The running backs played well. I want to talk about them because this was without Najee Harris and Benny Snell sat out. So you're the third string on down. You typically, if you were last year, you were thinking like, man, that group's gonna. But they performed very well, as did a lot of the receivers. We'll talk about them in just a second. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our great friends at BetterHelp. Now, if you're unfamiliar with BetterHelp, they're an online service that's going to help you deal with life's twists and turns and help remind you that it's important to show up for yourself by finding good online therapy. And with online therapy from BetterHelp, you'll assess your needs and they can help you match yourself with a licensed professional therapist that's suited just for you in less than 48 hours. You can talk about your personal experience with BetterHelp, or when you find that, you can find out the best therapy for yourself. For example, every day you're having your personal experience, you're living your life, and you're thinking, man, I don't have time to process this, I don't have time to process that. And that's when you're like, man, I need someone to help me with that. That's where a therapist comes in. And the therapists at BetterHelp are perfect to help with that. It's not a crisis line. It's not a self-help line. It's professional therapy done securely online, and it's available to people worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. And with therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit for you. So if that's the case, BetterHelp makes it easy and free to change therapists if needed. And they have a special offer right now for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon for 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio and the Ears and Beers podcast. Wes, I want to talk more about this offense because it wasn't just the quarterbacks. The receivers were getting open. George Pickens, I talked a lot about George Pickens in the immediate reaction episode I did, in the full episode that I did for Sunday. So I'm going to skip past that. If you want to hear my George Pickens praise and about how this man might be the second coming of Jesus, do all that. We did all that.
Fit him for his gold jacket already.
Right now. Let's just line him up. He's the best player of all time as it is. And I'm saying that facetiously because some people have taken it overboard, but there's nothing but hype that you can have for that man. So we're not going to delve into that. But even when you look down the line at what guys get, Gunnar Olszewski had to start in this game because Deontay Johnson didn't play with his hip flexor. Chase Claypool didn't play with his shoulder. So that bumped everyone else up a bit. And Gunnar Olszewski caught 3 of his 4 targets for 47 yards and a touchdown. One of them was a really good slot shake out of the slot where he was able to come out over the middle part of the field for Trubisky, an extended drive, and make a guy miss. And then also got open on a corner route where Mitch Trubisky found him for an open touchdown. These were good things across the board for this offense. And all camp long, Wes, you and I have seen the defense beat them up, celebrate, do the throw the ball in the air and pretend to shoot it dance, like boop, 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 like doing that thing. And you could see it wearing on the offense. But each time you and I were like, hey, guys, everyone's like, oh, man, the offense is going to stink this year. I'm like, hey, guys, that's a pretty talented defense over there. So give them a break. And I asked Gunnar Olszewski about not only his day, but how the offense has grown from that level of competition. Here's Gunnar talking about just that. Being so in rhythm, it seemed like you guys were just working like clockwork. Each of your quarterbacks tonight throw touchdowns in their first drives. Yeah. You guys been going up against that defense. Y'all been celebrating against each other, and now you have a night like this.
I think that's a credit to the way that we practice and how Mike T approaches each and every day and has us approach each and every day, that you can't help but get better. And when practice is that hard and he puts you in tough situations and you're coming out and you're winning them, and then when you play somebody else in real time, it almost seems easier. You know what I mean? Like, he puts us at a constant disadvantage for some drills we do, and whatnot. When you get in the games, you can just really run with it. I think that's just a credit to him.
When I talked to you in minicamp, I was after, like, Mason threw a touchdown on the run to you, and you were like, oh man, I want to get more. That Tom, I think, tried to call it back, but here you are in a game and you're catching touchdowns like that. What have you seen in yourself grow over the past month or so?
I just think I've become a much better football player since being in Pittsburgh, and the coaches here have been fantastic, and the guys around, and they do things different than the last place I was at, and it's just great to, you know, get my feet wet and get the opportunity, and everything work when we do get the opportunity to go out there.
Last thing for me is, so with Gunnar, you hear the confidence in himself, but also the confidence in the offense and the praise for Mike Tomlin for creating the football environment for those guys to test each other. And we've seen it, you know, there were fights, there was all this pushing back and forth, there was lots of that talk, but you see, you come out and the offense looked really good in this first game. Wes, I think it's a testament to not only the competition, but what the Steelers are trying to put together with this young core to shape who they're about to be in the start of this post-Ben Roethlisberger era.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, it was something that Gunnar hit on there. Is something that Arthur Moats has talked about a lot on SNR. You know, when they do these specific drills throughout camp, Mike Tomlin isn't trying to set it up on a level playing field that it's 50-50, right?
No.
He wants to put the offense in disadvantageous situations. He wants to do the same to the defense at times too. He wants to stress the guys and test the guys in that regard. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the Steelers' offense, let's be honest, Chris, they were excited to go against a unit that wasn't wearing black and gold on Saturday night. They just were. Individual drills, 7 shots, team period in 11-on-11. Listen, it's not like the offense was embarrassing out there in Latrobe. It's not like it was the entire time looking like the varsity team against the freshman team. But at the same time, too, the defense over, you know, the entire sample size that we've had, about 2.5 weeks of camp, they have certainly gotten the better of the offense most practices. There's been times where the offense has punched back and held their own, certainly. But overall, you know, if they're boxers standing in the middle of the ring and you and I are the referee, we're holding up the arm of the defense.
Of the defense, absolutely.
At the end of pretty much every practice. I think that was for a reason, particularly this year more than ever. I mean, we've all heard Mike Tomlin speak and how he expects the defense to be dominant and how they're not running away from that and how that's where they need to be this year and that's what the expectation is. When you are facing that every single day, eventually, you know, it feels like the dam has to break. And I think Saturday night it did for the offense. I mean, you saw it from every unit. From the first team to the second team to the third team, they were able to have success. They were able to score points. They were able to move the football. And a big part of that, I think, is what Gunnar hit on there. Mike Tomlin, he's been testing those guys the entire camp. He's been putting them in tough situations now, going on 3 weeks. And I think finally they were like, all right, hey, here's a game. It's 50-50, right? Let's get out there and let's show that, yeah, we might struggle against our defense, but that's because they're going to be one of the best 2 or 3 units in the entire league. Against everybody else, we know we can hold our own. And I think Gunnar certainly personified that as well, too. He's had a great camp. He had a great game last night, and you certainly have to be excited about the wide receiver position. But, yeah, it was nice. It was rejuvenating, I think, for the offense as well, too. Like, I'm very interested to see what this week looks like out at St. Vincent. Does the offense come to practice for the last 4 days of camp with a little bit of swagger and a little bit of attitude, and maybe they start to, you know, to push back with the defense a little bit? I don't know. But I think that was much needed for every first team, second team, third team, top of the roster with the all-pros and pro bowlers, down to guys who are fighting for roster spots. The offense needed something positive to hang their hat on, and I think we saw that in spades on Saturday. I mean, 32 points in a game. Yeah. I mean, they did that, once last year? And I know it's preseason, and I know it's third stringers at times and all this, but it's still the Steelers' third stringers against the Seahawks' third stringers. It's not like
Right.
it was the Steelers' first team against a bunch of bums from Seattle's, third and fourth string. The offense was able to have success at every single level, and I think for them, that'll put a real pep into their step, heading into this last week of camp.
Well, there was a pep in the step of the offensive line for sure, too, because they were blocking well, especially in the run. And I got a chance to talk to Kendrick Green because I especially thought the left side of the Steelers' offensive line did a great job. But to be honest, when I look back over the game, almost everybody did a really good job. Chukuma Okorafor was flattening people.
Chooks had a great game.
I thought he had a great game. Mason Cole looked very comfortable at center. There were some concerns, whether he could play the center position as competently as you'd want for a starting center, coming into this. But Kendrick Green, Dan Moore Jr. looked good. I caught up with Kendrick Green after the game. Here's Kendrick Green talking about not just how he did, but also how he's done next to Dan Moore Jr. Here we go. Kendrick, you got to rep with the ones at a different position. How did it feel getting your first NFL action or first in-game action at the new position?
Good. I feel more comfortable back in my normal position. Just feel back to where I belong.
No, I feel you on that. You did look more comfortable, especially in run fits. You guys are getting Anthony McFarland a lot of space, especially on that left side. What was it like working with Dan?
Me and Dan, we always, we kind of been my guys since we got in here, came together as rookies, so it's kind of nice getting to play next to him and communicate really well. We're always, helping each other out, and we've got really good, really well on kind of being in sync together.
So you hear that, and what's really funny, though, is that, when I talked to Kevin Dotson about a month ago, he said the same thing. We're really in sync. I have this really good rapport with Dan Moore Jr. When you hear that from two different guards battling for the same position but the same tackle, that usually says something good about that left tackle. I did a whole episode last week about how I think Dan Moore Jr. is the most improved of the Steelers' offensive line. But this group looked physical, Wes, and physical with a plan, because last year there were times they were physical, but they didn't know who they were blocking. This time, they were coordinated, and I think that was a good sign from Pat Meyer and his group.
They remember the Titans. They were agile, they were mobile, and they were hostile.
Yes.
And you're absolutely, and I love that clip from Kendrick Green. If you're someone who's just listening to this in audio form, you got to make sure you go to YouTube and see just the look on his face. Like, you heard me back in my home position. Like,
yes.
He is clearly a guy who, salute to him. He got thrown into the fire last year. 3rd round pick, right? Not like he was Marquise Pouncey coming out of college.
Right.
3rd round pick who only played 4 games as center in his college tenure, gets thrown in there to replace the legend Pouncey. And I mean, he had a rough rookie season. I don't think we need to sugarcoat that. I'm sure he would probably agree. But you've seen the body transformation. You've seen him move back to left guard. And it almost like you see him there talking to you. It's like he has a new lease on life, And I think that's huge as well, too. I think he's been rejuvenated. The battle with Dotson up until Dotson getting injured has certainly, I think there's been some iron sharpening iron there from those two. And that's a great situation for the Steelers to have. But yeah, between him and Dan Moore Jr. on the left side, I tell you what, if Dotson is never able to figure this thing out, right? We all had really high hopes for him after his rookie season. Dealt with injuries all of last year for the most part. He's dealing with injuries again now. If Dotson's, if this doesn't all come together for Dotson at some point here in the next year or so, I think you can do a lot worse for a plan B, and I'm using air quotes when I say that, than Kendrick Green. I mean, he looks like a guy who, like I said, has a new lease on his football life, and if this is where he's at right now, just moving back to left guard and almost, learning that position now in the offense, new offensive line coach, 2nd year in the league, but playing a different position now for the Steelers. I mean, imagine where he'll be 2 months from now. I think there's a lot to be encouraged by, but I'm with you. I think the physicality was one of the biggest elements, right? Because when the Steelers' offensive line was struggling last year, what did we all say so many times? Like, where's the physicality, right? Like, where's that F you, I'm going to bust your face mask mentality? We didn't see much of that last season. I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that. There's certainly been some nastiness in camp. Mason Cole has brought a whole lot of nasty with him from Minnesota down to Pittsburgh. And I think there's just, there's some pride there too. A lot of the guys in that room, they spent time in their careers with good offensive linemen with around elite run play. And I think, I know you know this too, since OTAs, it doesn't matter if it's Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson, Dan Moore Jr., Mason Cole, James Day, all these guys, one thing that they have all been preaching since May is that we want to be a physical, nasty offensive line that can enforce our will and run the football in any situation. And you know what? You have to almost manifest those things before they happen. And I think we've seen that play out now over the last 2 months. They certainly seem like they're moving in that direction. And, other than the quarterback play, that's got to be as encouraging as anything with this team to this point.
I think so as well. We're still going to talk about the backup running backs and a little bit about the defense in a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, which is well underway and heading towards the playoff in a couple months here, but also with football back in preseason, there's a lot of preseason lines and betting odds. If you were Tony Serino, you weighed money if you bet on the Steelers last night. Go to BetOnline to learn about all the odds across preseason and the season-long prop bets that you can put down so that you can enjoy watching your team and see things play out for the long haul. But all that can be learned at betonline.net, your continued sports source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Wes Euler. Wes, we got to talk about the running backs. I do want to get to the defense, and we've talked all offense so far. But when we watched this game, and you and I talked about this off camera, but you looked at how everyone did. Anthony McFarland ran 7 carries, 56 yards, averaging over 8 yards, about 8 yards a carry. Jalen Warren, six carries, 34 yards, over 5 yards a carry. Master Teague, 6 carries, 31 yards, over 5 yards per carry. This was without Najee Harrison or Benny Snell, and these guys were hitting the holes. They were confident, because we've seen plenty of times even when the Steelers had a good offensive line, that sometimes certain running backs just didn't see the hole and didn't make the right decision, and that was a problem. That wasn't a problem for these guys, and it had to feel really good for Anthony McFarland, who he's a third-year player. This is kind of like a big year for him to prove, like, hey, I do deserve to be here. They've brought in all these undrafted rookies like Jalen Warren, like Mateo Durant, like Master Teague, to say, hey, if y'all don't step up, there's somebody behind you who will. McFarland, we spoke to him after the game. He seemed confident that he's taking steps forward, but here's him talking about how he's taken step forwards and how running back coach Eddie Faulkner, who we talked with last Monday, has helped him get there. Here's Anthony McFarland.
I feel like your decision-making process has improved drastically over the past year or so, like things that you've seen improving yourself when you've been studying your own game?
Yeah. Like I said, I study my game a lot, and I feel like I got to keep improving, but I feel like I've made some jumps from coming in the all season in the camp.
What kind of challenges have Eddie Faulkner provided you with that you've seen? You're like, hey, I got to clean that up to make myself better.
A lot of challenges. I know when I first came in, I was always looking for the big play or the home run hit, and he just really taught me how to just be efficient. 4 yards is a good run. That's something I'm starting to really understand, especially being in a professional. 4 yards is a good run.
Anthony McFarland was always a speed back. Even his days at Maryland, he made big plays. And
go watch that game against Ohio State.
I mean, he just ripped them apart in that game in his college days. But part of what he's saying is you have to understand, not every run needs to be a home run. If you get a single, if you get a double, it's still good, and that's when a 4-yard run is a good run. If you run 4 yards per carry and you literally run the ball the entire game, you will literally get a first down on every single drive. Math. Why? Because if you get 4 yards and 3 tries, that's 12 yards. You get a first down as long as you don't get a holding penalty. Yeah, Wes is doing that West Virginia math in his head right now.
I need more fingers. I don't have 12 fingers.
But the point is that Wes, is that we're seeing that progress from him, and he's understanding that thing. And I think we've seen that understanding also with Benny Snell in training camp. I think that immediately we've seen that understanding from Jalen Warren, who Eddie Faulkner on this show praised last week. Saying like this kid's in the classroom, he's learning, he's asking the right questions, and he's coming out and showing that he's learning from those questions on the field. Wes, I don't think that the backup running back position is as much of a problem as we thought it would be going into training camp.
I agree with you on that. There have been guys that have emerged that have played well. I still don't know if any one of them has had that type of camp and preseason game where you say, oh, okay, yeah, we have to keep that guy around. I think Jaylen Warren has bordered on that at times. But you're right, Chris. One thing that I really like about this group is the simplicity of it. Honestly, it's something Max Starks was talking about this on the broadcast on Saturday night, how he wants his running backs. He wants to preach to the running backs AFF, which is what he was saying. Always fall forward.
Yes.
And basically what he means with that, right, is hit the hole and get your momentum going forward. And that's how you turn what would be 2-yard runs into those 4-yard runs that you're talking about. Too often in the past, I think with both Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland, and obviously we didn't see Benny on Saturday night, but those guys have been guilty of maybe trying to do the Lev Bell thing a little too much dancing, a little too much patience when just listen, Lev Bell's one of few guys that we've ever seen do that at that level. He was a rare, exceptional talent and was also playing behind the best offensive line in football that knew how to block for him in that regard. A lot of times for these guys, you have to simplify everything. Like Anthony McFarland said there when he was talking to you, if you're looking to hit the home run on every single play, you're going to strike out a lot. I mean, that's right. Barry Bonds is Barry Bonds for a reason. Mike Trout is Mike Trout for a reason. Not everybody can be looking for home runs on every single pitch. You got to AFF. You got to always be falling forward, as Max Starks would say. You have to get that momentum going and drive through instead of dancing. And that's how you turn 1-yard runs into 3-yard runs. That's how you turn 2-yard runs into 4-yard runs. That's one of the things I really like from Jaylen Warren. He's done that all camp. There's no dilly-dally. There's no prancing around. He's hitting that hole, and he's going. And he is always, even for his size, driving defenders back. I think you really have started to see that from Anthony McFarland as well, too. Master Teague, obviously, that is his game. I mean, that's what he's predicated upon. But that is encouraging as well, too, because the Steelers' offense last year, it was a lot of struggles. It certainly was. And Najee Harris, we all know, he did well playing behind that offensive line and the limitations of the offense. But if this attitude kind of permeates the entire running back room, you get a step forward from your offensive line play. You combine all those things with the Matt Canada elements that we've been talking about as well, too. That's how you have a complementary offense. Something the Steelers haven't had for a few years. They've had times where they've been able to run the ball well. They've had times where they've been able to pass the ball well. But it's been really, probably since 2017 or 2018 that we've seen both of those. Probably 2018 when James Conner had the huge year. Yeah. Antonio Brown was being AB. That was probably the last time we saw a really balanced Steelers offense that could hit you with the run, that could gash you through the air. And it feels like with this group, with the improvements of the offensive line, and now certainly we know that the plethora of talent that the Steelers have on the outside, and if you notice from Saturday night too, what looked like a real inkling to attack the middle of the field now too, which I think is huge.
Yes.
All those things coming together, that's how you get complementary football. That's how you... I'm doing a lot of name dropping here, but as Craig Wolfley would say, that's how you get a very copacetic offense moving in the right direction.
Well, it's like, when I was chilling with Franco Harris and Jack Lambert and Hines Ward and Troy Polamalu.
When I was hanging out with Barry Sanders the other day, he told me.
Yeah, exactly. Look at you name dropping, but to your point and to be accurate, yes, you're right. I feel you on that about the running back room. This is a group that needs to take those steps forward, and this is a unit, or this is an offense that they need to find their identity right now, and it's good that they're finding guys who are getting more comfortable. But before we go, I wanted to get quick thoughts from you on the run defense, because they also didn't have a good day. I talked about Devin Bush yesterday. He had a really bad miss in the hole, but you also had a situation where there's no Cam Hayward, no Tyson Alualu, no Larry Ogunjobi, no TJ Watt, no Alex Highsmith. That's literally the 5 guys that would line on the line of scrimmage not playing. So
maybe like 4 of your best 5 run stoppers in there as well too.
Exactly. And I look at that and I say, okay, like no excuses for the rest of the team. But you were hoping to see Henry Mondu, to see Isaiah Loudermilk, to see those guys up front, and that includes Devin Bush. I do think Miles Jack played the game well, but you were hoping to see these guys take a step up in run defense, and they hadn't. Are you concerned right now, Wes, about the future of that group? Or is it like, hey, first preseason game, and these were the backups, let's just keep watching the preseason game. We got 2 more before this season starts.
Yeah, D-line specifically, not as much concern because, as you mentioned, I mean, the 3 guys that we all anticipate being the starters on that defensive line were inactive last night. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. To me, Chris, the concern is, and I know you touched on this in your post-game reactions, other than Miles Jack, the inside linebackers didn't look great on Saturday night. Mark Robinson made 1 or 2 nice plays, but overall, still not great, particularly against the run. As you correctly pointed out, that one play from Devin Bush and Robert Spillane where the Seahawks had a big gain, I think it was an 18-yard gain on the ground, not good. I mean, they completely read the play wrong. They got caught on the wrong side of the field. They were in no man's land. And I don't care how good the defensive line is. If your linebackers are getting caught like that, you're not going to be great against the run. And we don't need the Steelers to be great against the run. We just need them to be league average.
Yeah, be good.
They were 32nd out of 32 teams. I can do the West Virginia math on that one last year. Mm-hmm. Just get in like the 16, 17, 18 range this year. And when you combine that with the playmakers you have on the back end, with the ability that we know the Steelers have to get after the quarterback, 5 straight years of leading the NFL in sacks, you're going to be fine on defense. You'll be better than fine. You'll be a very good defense. You'll be one of the best units in the league. But I think there has to be concern at the interior linebacker position. You got a grain of salt everything with the defensive line. On the outside as well, too. Your 2 starters, T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, not playing. But what we saw from Devin Bush wasn't great. What we saw from Robert Spillane wasn't great. Buddy Johnson wasn't great.
Yeah.
You really want some of those guys to emerge. And I thought particularly, Bush and Spillane too. Like you just can't, at this stage of their careers, you can't have those mental mistakes. And it's preseason game number 1. It's a long season. Everybody's allowed to make mistakes. Chris, I'm doing the halftime and the post-game reports now on the Steelers broadcasts. I slipped up at halftime and made a mistake on my report. All right.
Did you call it Heinz Field? Because
no, I didn't call it Heinz Field.
I was rewatching the broadcast. Bob Pompiani calls it Heinz Field as he's talking to Art Rooney. So I'm sitting there I'm like, I can only imagine. Like I when I'm on Channel 11, I have our guy Dean, who part of the agency. We'll have him back on the show too with Josh Axelrod soon. But Dean will get in my ear and he'll tell me things when I'm messing up, and I can only imagine he'll like say, "Hey, Bob, that's Acrisure." And then Missy Matthews did the same thing on the sideline, and I'm like, "Oh no!" So again, mistakes happen.
Happen. Game 1 particularly. Yeah. You'll be happy to hear this, though. Billy Hillgrove only messed it up one time, and it was during a break. It was while we were in break. So Billy was great, and you'll love it. We have in the booth, Billy has his spotters, obviously. You got Wolf in there as well, too. And it's myself and Dan Quinlan, who's one of our iHeartRadio guys as well, too. I engineer, Dan produces. And God bless Dan. Dan brought little signs, little pieces of paper that just said Acrisure Stadium in big bold letters, and he taped them all over the broadcast booth. And so it worked out. We only had one slip up, and like I said, it was during break when we were off air. But yes, everybody makes mistakes week 1, all right? At halftime, I had a sponsorship read that I forgot to do, and I threw it to break, all right? No one's perfect, particularly in week 1 of the preseason when it's still mid-August. But for guys like Robert Spillane and Devin Bush, they're not Mark Robinson rookies. They're not Buddy Johnson second-year guys really trying to carve out their role. They should know, and that was a little discouraging. I'm not saying go to Staples and buy a panic button, or Staples sells easy buttons, whatever it is, you get it. But at the same time, that was not encouraging to see, certainly.
Right, but like you said, they got time to fix it. We'll see where they fix it as training camp resumes today, Monday, at St. Vincent College. The Steelers are back there for the final week of training camp.
4 more days.
I will let you know ahead of time, y'all. I will most likely not be there much this week because I am starting with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette this Monday, so I'll be covering the University of Pittsburgh's football and basketball programs. We will be talking about them a lot, so thank you, Wes.
Let's go, CC.
So there will still be shows. There will still be shows, but you won't be seeing me at camp as much, tweeting out 7 shots and things like that. So don't be alarmed. It's just all part of the process. But when they're back to the South Side, you'll be hearing more from me there as well. Wes, thanks so much for joining me on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, at Wesley Euler on Twitter. Arthur Motes and I, we're out in Latrobe every day, so 4 more days out in Latrobe, high noon on Steelers Nation Radio. We're on from noon to 2. You can also get us in podcast form, every show uploaded after the fact, commercial-free, on demand, Steelers Blitz, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be off on Friday, and then we'll be rolling. We're at noon now every single day for the rest of the season. I, of course, have the Ears and Beers podcast that I do with Adam Crowley. And Chris, for those that are watching on YouTube, all right, you see all this West Virginia stuff behind me, all right? I'm not just doing that to bother Chris Carter, although that's a nice fringe benefit, I will tell you.
Yes.
I'm also doing a pretty significant, another WVU podcast. This one just football, though. Ears and Beers, we talk football, we talk basketball, we talk beers, we talk all kinds of stuff, Crowley and I. This new podcast we just started last week, it's called In the Gun. So In the Gun podcast, if you're a WVU fan, wherever you get your podcast, it's a WVU football podcast. It's network affiliated. I'm doing it with Jed Drenning, who is been the WVU football sideline reporter for 20 years, and he also played quarterback for Rich Rodriguez back in the day. And Owen Schmidt, who, anybody who is a big college football person, you'll remember Owen Schmidt. He was the fullback during the Pat White and Steve Slayton era, the dude who would bang his his helmet over his head and bleed all the time. So it's myself, it's Jed Drenning, it's Owen Schmidt, and it is a pure X's and O's WVU football podcast with a lot of cool stories, for two guys who played for Rich Rodriguez and really know football. So In the Gun podcast, new venture as well, too, if you are a tortured WVU soul like me.
Absolutely. Do check Wes out. He does a lot of great work. Listen to him, watch him anywhere you can. That's why we love having him on this show. Wes, thanks so much for making the visit here on Locked On Steelers. Thank you, dear listeners and viewers, for checking us out on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, or YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button on the video on YouTube. Hit subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our episodes. If you enjoy this audio version and you're listening on Apple, please go to Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars with a positive comment. You do both at the same time. We can do a special shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again, everybody, for listening and watching. I'm Chris Carter at Carter Critiques. Follow me there. Check me out at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Be back on your screens and in your ears tomorrow talking more about your Pittsburgh Steelers.